Gentlemen, I would like to transfer the microphone to my friend and our president, Colonel Ken Breyer. Take it on.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Tawfik Hamid. How are you?
Hello, my brother. Assalamu alaikum, shalom, and peace be upon you.
Yes, that's right. Dr. Tawfik Hamid is a physician and educator and an Islamic thinker and reformer. But he was a one-time Islamic extremist in Egypt. He was a member of a radical Islamic organization, Jama Islamiyah, JI of Egypt, and he had a gentleman named Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri, who later became second command of Al-Qaeda, and I think last week has been returned to Allah.
Yeah.
After being radicalized in the Jama, he had an awakening by his human conscience, recognizing the threat of radical Islam, and started to teach modern peaceful interpretations of classical Islamic core texts. Dr. Hamid has 2 higher degrees, one in internal medicine, which includes psychiatry as an essential component, and the second degree is in cognitive psychology. So whatever you say tonight, he will be reading you. And these studies, along with Dr. Hamid's experience as a former radical, allowed him to become a leading scholar in the mindset and psychology of jihadism and that jihadism phenomenon. He's been a consultant on subject matter to the FBI and the Pentagon, and he wrote a book, Inside Jihad, How Radical Islam Works, Why It Should Terrify Us, and How to Defeat It. He's been in many publications, Al Jazeera and Foreign Policy and Washington Post. And we are very happy to have you here with us tonight, Doctor, and we look forward to your thoughts. Shukran.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Ken. Before we turn to Dr. Hamid, let me begin with asking you a fundamental question.
Yes.
Tawfik, you have created an educational program that basically combats Islamic radicalism.
Yeah.
Can you give us a glimpse as to what this program is all about?
Absolutely. And I will start initially by general idea about the program, because actually I feel that talking about solutions is the main issue in my life. I know that there are many problems of radical Islam, but what I really care about is how to solve them and how to use the most efficient and effective tactics and approaches. So I created a program. The general title is Education for Peace and Tolerance, but it's directed toward the ideology to defeat this ideology. And I will show you some examples in the next few minutes. Just to begin, just without going into details, I was born for a secular family. My father was a doctor. My mother was a French teacher. And I grew up in a very secular family, yet I was radicalized. And this was one of the reasons, or is one of the reasons, why I put more effort and focus in solving it, because I want really to save many young children from going into this path. Children are born innocent, and the education, the ideology, the process of thinking all shapes their mind in a way that can make this different. Would you mind just to allow me to share screen? Am I allowed to share?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Just please. Just a second. I will share just a second. Yes, here it is. Give me 1 second to be able to, I don't know where, yeah, here it is. Downloads. Yes, here it is. I'm opening it and I will be with you in a few seconds. Sorry about that. Yeah.
By the way, we want to welcome Maha too.
Maha?
We want to welcome her and
yes, thank you so much.
Say hello to her.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. I don't know. I'm lady, but
Maha, your
yes.
English is not clear. You can try to use maybe the cell phone or close
Okay.
the
All
way
right. I
to
will
stop
try to use a cell phone.
interference between the two things.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me tonight. I really appreciate that.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Seeing
I'm
you
trying
all.
now. Do you see me now clearly, or can you just 1 second, please? I'm trying to. I don't know. I'm trying to open it. Doesn't. I don't know what's going on. The technology, there is something wrong. Hello? Hello?
Okay. It's okay. It happens to all of us. I had it last week.
Yeah. I started to see it now. I will share a screen. Here it is. Here it is. Yes, here I am, finally. Yeah. So I will give you a glimpse about the Education for Peace and Tolerance program, which aims at actually defeating and countering the ideology of Islamic radicalism online. I'm one of the people who believe that the online world is very powerful and we can do a lot of things through it. For example, I used to preach some peaceful views to the Muslim population when I was in Egypt 40 years ago. Trying to do some form of reform. Only 6 people in my whole life followed me, including Maha, my wife. So this success was only limited to 6 people. After that, I started to work online. So you see what happened in few years, I got my modern commentary on the Quran, which is trying to interpret the difficult parts in a peaceful way. It reached 2 million followers today. It's in Arabic language. So I am one of the believers in the power of the internet online world to make change as long as you provide effective educational content. And this is what I am trying to do here with my program, Education for Peace and Tolerance. The first thing in the program, I like always to put some form of metrics before doing anything, because I am going to find radical Islam. So what radical Islam is, it's just a word in vacuum, or we need to set some metrics for it so that we know what we are doing. So I have a well-known, relatively or famous description for radical Islam called ABC's test for radical Islam, which is apostate killing, barbaric treatment of women, like violence against women, stoning, female genital mutilation, calling Jews pigs and monkeys, declaring war on non-Muslims to spread the religion, enslavement of female war prisoners and raping them, as we have seen with ISIS, fighting Jews before end days and killing all of them. This is a huge belief in the Middle East and is impeding a lot of peace efforts. Gay killing also and discrimination, all of this in the package of violence, hatred, barbarism, anti-Semitism, all of them are part of radical Islam. When I talk about radical Islam in a strategic manner, how I dealt with this with this program, I did small pilot study, and I will show you the preliminary results at the end. I use multi-strategic approaches, like including dealing with the ideology itself, the thinking process. I remember the first thing that was said to me by the radicals was al-fikru kufr, which thinking will make me an infidel. So the first thing they did was suppression of my critical thinking, and they used the ideology very effectively to promote their violence and hatred, anti-Semitism, anti-woman, you name it. I used also some psychological aspects because they play very well with the psychology. Hatred and love is all about psychology. Also, I use facts because with misinformation that they give to young Muslims, they distorted the mind of many people by wrong information, and they are extremely illogical, but they work in their mind. So I decided to use facts in certain way, and I will show you how cognitive psychology and educational tactics can come here in this equation. When it comes to ideology, and I'm very brief here, by the way, just to give you just quick notes. Like, for example, there is a well-known verse in the Quran saying, kill the infidels wherever you find them. And many radicals, including myself, believed in this literally and thought that we have to fight any non-Muslim. It's a big problem here in the mind of millions of people. So I created a distinction between the word used with al-kafirin or the infidels and the word man kafar, which means any infidel. So I created some form of linguistic distinction here to limit the violent meaning of all these verses to certain place in time and history rather than generalizing it to everybody. And actually with the ideology, I would love to share with you something also that was considered the first time in the history of Islam that someone observed it and put it that way. I know that anti-Semitism is based on a lot of verses in the Quran directed toward the Yahud, or what generally means in their mind the Jews or the Jewish people. So I decided to go deep analysis in the language of the Quran. I realized there are 4 expressions for the word Jews, not one in general. There is al-Yahud and al-Ladhina Hadu and the Ashabu Sabt and the Bani Israel. And I showed with some evidence that al-Yahud who are cursed in the Quran are not the children different from the children of Israel. They are certain tribes that existed historically in certain place, and they are different. They worship they believe in certain things that the current Jewish people never believe in them. So I proved this with evidence. Then I came to the Ashabu Sabt, the people of the Sabbath, showing that they are people of certain village described in the Quran. They worked against the Torah and the Quran was against them. And then it comes to the children of Israel when I use the verses that says, for example, يا بني إسرائيل اذكروا نعمتي التي أنعمت عليكم وأني فضلتكم على العالمين, which means, O children of Israel, remember the gifts that I have given to you and that I have preferred you above all mankind. So I showed clearly that there is a language distinction between the 4 expressions, and all the curses and the negative verses are directed toward a group or specific groups rather than all the children of Israel that have been actually praised in the Quran in many times in certain areas. So I try to go through the ideology in this way. And this is part of the solution. I cannot say this is the only part of the program. This is just a part of it. The other part is the thinking process. And here is another program that is very specific to work on the thinking process, because if you have a religious text, it goes into our brain and the brain interprets it in certain way, and the thinking process affects the behavior at the end. So I focus with humanity education on human brains and minds to change the process of thinking in certain way. For example, I realize there are certain aspects in human mind that creates radicalism, such as absolutism, such as judgmentalism. When I judge you as a bad person, for example, and I start hating you, and many other metrics that I used here. For example, here I gave this example. I said some guy called whatever Hani is saying this is a Satan, and someone called Layla girl, she said no, it is an angel. Then I asked them who is right, and then I asked them to invert to the 880 degrees to show that both of them actually are right, because when you see this image from this angle and you see it is the same image from the other angle, it looks like an angel here. So I'm using here some form of cognitive measures or methods here with illustrations, with graphics, to make them reach the conclusion. That's called in education the generation effect. When I make you reach the answer rather than just simply giving you the answer. So I use here a specific cognitive psychology tactic, plus the illustration and graphics. I do some memory up tactics to make them work better in human memory. So I address the thinking traits of radicalism using specific cognitive psychology tactics and the specific educational techniques to deal with it effectively at the end. There are many ways really to do this. Also psychology. Psychology plays a major role I realized when I write op-eds or pieces about the Arab-Israeli conflict, I have huge revolt from many in the Muslim world. I write them in Arabic, okay? So I decided to use a completely different approach. I said, okay, let me do it in another way to make people relax while discussing the issue, because we typically discuss this issue like a war, people fighting against one another. So I said, حوار مع صديق اليهود, which means a lovely discussion with my Jewish friend. And I decided actually to use this image to make people relax, because when you are angry, your brain doesn't function well and your subconscious will react immediately with hate and anger. So I tried to move the whole process of thinking to the cortex level of the brain, so that people think in what I am saying rather than emotionally react to it or against it. So I put a wonderful piece that was circulated in huge numbers, and actually it worked very well when I put this cup of coffee with it, not just a political image, no, just a cup, making it very friendly with a Jewish friend. We are discussing, and he was asking questions, and the questions were so powerful that I wanted people to think and realize that many of the things that they think about are absolutely wrong and absolutely irrational. And I showed this in the op-ed. So I use here some elements of psychology as well, plus educational techniques and tactics. Here is, for example, how I use facts also to deal with the phenomenon. Here is the Egyptian dollar compared, Egyptian pound, my apology, compared to the US dollar from 1789. This is historical till today. Okay, so I showed them, for example, between 1960 and 1950 and 70, between or 60, Nasser kicked the Jewish people out of Egypt.
Yeah.
Many in the Middle East, the Arabs, I mean, honestly, that's the situation, believe that the Jewish people damage the nations. They destroy the economy of country. They are so evil, and they put them in caricature style of things to portray them as an evil creatures who destroy the economy of countries. So instead of telling them, no, the Jewish people are good people, many of them are good people, and that's wrong, instead of saying it as simple fact, I use the generation effect in certain way. I put this curve, and then I asked I mentioned the fact that the Jewish people have been kicked out. If the Jewish people were so bad and evil and destroying the economy of Egypt, why the US pound really, the Egyptian pound should have been stronger compared to the US dollar after Nasser kicked them out? Imagine if they are so bad destroying the economy of Egypt, Nasser kicked them out, then the Egyptian pound should go higher and higher and the US dollar should go lower. So this curve actually, after kicking the Jews outside Egypt, should actually go down, not up to this degree. And I asked them, if the Jewish people were really that bad, can you explain to me why when Nasser kicked them out, the economy of Egypt collapsed rather than flourished? So I turn it to them to answer. Once they think, and this opposes the critical thinking that's used by the radicals. And a second step is the generation effect. I make them generate the facts rather than just telling them, oh, they are okay. Give them an example, illustrations, curve, and questions. In certain way, I do what is called contextual variability and encoding variability. Contextual variability, when I use this fact and put it in different contexts so that I can reach your brain from different angles. Encoding variability is when I use several types of graphics, illustrations, or questions, or a story. So it's called encoding. How it's not context, it's the code itself of the memory. I use different types of codes. When it comes to the whole philosophy, is simply a use of effective educational content via using articles, videos, infographics, questions, So I really modify the way I am doing it. And I add some cognitive psychology tactics, as I mentioned to you, the generation effect, the contextual encoding variability, what is called the spreading activation model, how to link some information in the brain to another one. I also use a lot of what is called the separate store model for memory, which is simply, if I'm giving you some information, it needs attention from the person so that this information goes to the short-term memory store. Imagine if now you are focused with me and the TV is beside you saying something. If you are focused with me, you will not understand what they are saying. You need to give attention to the source of information so that the information goes to your short-term memory. My game here is how to move it to the long-term memory so it becomes more consolidated in their brain. So I do, it's not an opinion, it's what science showed. Rehearsal within the critical 30 seconds after I give the fact or information, I do some form of rehearsal again in certain way to make sure that this information moves from the short-term memory stores to the long-term memory stores to create what is called consolidated memory in human minds. So I used many of these tactics to ensure that the effective educational content does not go in vain, and it will reach their brain and mind, and it become consolidated to affect their way of thinking. I had a pilot study. Actually, what happened, I was talking to some friends of mine here in America, and they suggested, okay, why not we support some pilot study to study this. So I started to create some slides, illustrations, a few ones every month. And within 3 months, actually, period of time of the study, and I used the $1 per day program, which is simply when you create something on Facebook, unfortunately, Facebook limits you now from reaching all your people unless you pay some money to reach even your people. So I use the minimal to show the power of the content. So you can't go less than $1 a day for a slide or a video. You can't. That is, Facebook will not accept. So I created slides, videos, and very professional ones, and I can share them with you, but they are in Arabic. That's the problem. I apologize, but we can have a parallel program in English if
Yes,
it is
course.
needed. Yeah, or Urdu, whatever. But I started in Arabic. That's easier for me, and then it could be translated to several languages. The total engagements in 3 months for just a few slides and less than 20, actually. With that, when you add likes and shares plus the positive comments, I got more than actually to 240,000 likes and shares and comments, which is significant number when you have this interaction in short period in a very primitive study with minimal resources. So this was within 3 months with very small number of slides and videos in Arabic with showing that nearly 250,000 shares and likes and positive comments in 3 months period. Also more than 80% of them were positive, which is good. When you add the likes and shares, they are certainly positive. The comments, of course, there are negative. I cannot describe that many will be against it, but as long as you encourage them to think, you encourage them to change their ways of thinking, and you take it effectively via the use of effective educational tactics, then I believe the power of the internet can achieve what the military, with all my respect and to the military, they can work in the last step of the terrorism itself and the militant people. But I believe that working at the periphery here, like poliomyelitis, we eradicated polio not by actually going to the sick ones to treat them. There was no treatment for polio, but by working on the normal people to vaccinate them to prevent the spread of the radicalization process of itself. So if you have a normal person becoming a radical, then becoming a militant, you need the military to deal with the militant. But you need some work before this to make sure that the number of terrorists are not created, or radicals in general that do all these infringements for human rights are not created on a daily basis. Also,
Dr. Hamid, we are going to meet privately on this matter in the next week or so.
yeah.
Okay.
And I have just a couple of minutes here to finish this. The total video views was more than 100K, and the other one where I promote no hide loads. It's really a mix of wonderful things in this direction. And finally, thank you so much. And I'm more than happy to accept now or discuss any questions with you.
Well, we have a large audience here outside our board, so we will discuss it with the board members later on.
Okay.
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 But you know, we can still have general questions here. But I wanted to ask you another question.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you one more question, and then go on with your regular presentation.
Okay.
What kind of impact do you believe is the demise of al-Zawahiri have on radicalism in the Muslim world, and in particularly on Al-Qaeda and the likes?
It will have some impact, but the cancer has metastasized already. So you kill one of the cancers, you have many cancers here and there and there. So that is a problem with the killing the jihadists. It's not simply a person, it's an ideology that goes in the mind that transformed al-Zawahiri from an innocent person to a radical or a terrorist after that. The same ideology works in other places. So it has an effect, but very small effect that I don't consider it significant one. It has an effect, it's good step, but we without dealing with the source root cause of the problem, all these things are of limited success. Do you want me to give a brief on certain things with my story, or I just would like
absolutely, please go ahead.
Just to give you some idea about what happened to me, and I had some form of brainwashing process. Within few months I became a radical, and I realized that they do this via suppression of my critical thinking, via the suppression of my human conscience. That's one of the worst things that can ever happen to a human being, when you suppress his human conscience. So you don't feel that you are doing something wrong. You think you are actually doing great thing for God or Allah. They take you gradually from a normal person. They create hatred toward the other. Then they desensitize you for the use of violence, and then they encourage you to go further with attacking people. I was actually asked by them to kidnap a police officer in Cairo and bury him alive in the mosque of Jama'ah Islamiyah beside it. So this was very difficult for me to do, and it was completely against my human conscience. And I started to think if what I'm doing is correct or wrong. Once I started to think, it reverses the process of radicalism completely. So I felt that with my experience, that suppression of critical thinking was one of the main things that helped them to radicalize me. I defined later on in life, I defined radical Islam in the metrics that I showed you earlier, the ABCs for radical Islam: apostate killing, and the stoning of women, and calling Jews pigs and monkeys. And I do remember a moment that I would love to share with you. Now, I was in Dearborn, Michigan, speaking to a huge public, like more than 1,000 people at a big night there. And while I was speaking about the ABCs, some imam from Senegal, he was tall imam, he came toward me and interrupted the speech and said, "Why, Dr. Hamid, you mention these ABCs? I am a moderate imam and moderate person. I have Jewish friends here in the community and Christian friends." And I said to him, "Thank you, Imam, for saying this, but would you mind, Imam, to prove to me and to the audience right now that you are moderate?" Everyone was silent. And then I said to him, "Would you mind, Imam, to invite me and some of our Jewish friends and the brothers and sisters to your mosque next Friday prayer, and instead of telling me and the audience how moderate you are, you just stand up in front of you, in front of your congregation in the mosque, and say it clearly, loudly, and unambiguously that Jews are not pigs and monkeys. Would you mind to do this, Imam? And believe me, Joseph, he didn't say a word. He didn't utter one single voice. So it is so easy to say I'm a moderate or this person is a moderate. That's why I insisted to have metrics. Without having metrics for radical Islam, the ABC's test, then we are fighting what? We are fighting nothing. How can you even claim that you achieved something? If you see what I mean? So yeah. The first thing I put the metrics, yes. Do you think we should go for questions overall?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I'm happy to take questions. And
yeah,
I apologize. I probably misunderstood some of the top, but I'm happy to take any question.
Why don't we give the floor to our president first? Ken, you want to ask the first question?
I can't hear. Yeah.
There we go. Dr.
Yes.
Hamid, I was wondering why so many of the leading terrorists are doctors.
Oh, that's one of the most brilliant questions. And thank you for asking it. Very good question. I'll tell you why it's more common in doctors, or relatively common in doctors, for several reasons, actually. Number one, I'll give you an example about even my case. In medicine, we used to study physiology, biochemistry, and histology, and all of this is used in context that it proves the existence of a creator, of God. So it helped us to take us to the first step. So I was so attracted to the concept of God and creator, and via biochemistry and physiology. And you start to develop very high level of love and care about, and once this happens, that is like energy. You can use it in any direction. You can make a person use his love to God to become good with his fellow human being. And the same energy can be used to go and explode them, thinking that it will satisfy this God. So it was like energy me created via studying the medical basic sciences, anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, and it makes me take the first step toward religion, which is strongly belief in God and desire to do anything for him. The second was the existence of cadaver rooms every day with us. I was in the first year, and the cadaver room with dead bodies was in front of us. And this helped the radicals to tell us, look, how your life will end like this. Why should you even care about this life? The second life is what you care about. You should care about, and dying at the Shaheed is the only guarantee for you to make sure that you will go to paradise in the second life. So the existence of cadaver room and death beside us, also the existence of diseases. They used it very effectively. We see diseases every day or hear about. So it was used like in a way to tell us, if you obeyed God and you followed the Sharia rules and this stuff, he will bless you and you will not get these diseases. If you disobeyed him, he might curse you and you can have this. And you see it on daily basis. And you go pray with them on daily basis. So it all helped them to really shape our minds. But what is more critical is the way medicine is taught. When a professor in medicine teaches people like the dose of penicillin is 500 milligrams every day or every 6 hours, I have no saying. I will just follow blindly. I don't think. So it's information-wise, it's huge amount of information. Yes, medicine, but we don't think. There is no critical thinking, no creativity. It's not music you have to think and create, or drawing, or something you should use your mind for it. No, you take the information as it is. You can't change the milligram to nanogram. You can't. It's fixed information. And once your brain also adapted to accepting the facts without even any form of critique or thinking, it applies also to the religious beliefs of the radicals, and it all worked together to really encourage many of the doctors to go into this path and direction.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You are welcome.
Well, Phil, are you there? Do you want to ask a question?
Thanks, Joseph. I sure do. Doctor, fascinating discussion. You talk so clearly about indoctrination, and we've seen with the advent of the Abraham Accords, countries having deep relationships that are evolving rapidly, but the education systems in those countries just a few years back were still teaching anti-Israel and anti-Semitic theory. So I was just wondering how you see the future as Israel begins to make better relations with, and hopefully peace with, more of her Arab neighbors, which are, overwhelmingly Muslim countries, how you see being able to undo or impact years and years and years of formal training that kids in these countries get that tell them to hate Israel. How do you see that ship turning?
Thank you for this very important question. I see that changes are happening at the top level of governments, but I agree with you that at the educational levels, the change is minimal. And sometimes it is misleading. Like, for example, you can hear about some country going to remove the text in their curriculum that talks negatively about the Jewish people or Israel. That's not enough, because I didn't learn radicalization in the school. I learned it in the mosque outside. You see what I mean? So removing it, omitting it from the educational content, the negative things about the Jews, is not a solution at all. It just it shows the others that, oh, we are doing something. We removed it. Yeah. That's fine. That's good. But people do not learn. The problem is not coming mainly from the schools. It's coming actually from the mosques. If you don't change the teaching in the mosques as well, then it's just useless. Also, that's why one of my comments in the Wall Street Journal one day was about the concept that if we need to address this problem, you need a new interpretation for the negative verses in the Quran about the Jews and Israel. And this is what I'm doing. And they don't do this. They just remove it from the school and they tell everybody, look, we are doing something. But the reality, as you said, the change, I see it at the top level, and the bottom level, the level of hatred is unprecedented. And you can ask me, how can I evaluate this? Very simple. I go to anything about the Jewish people or Israel on the internet or Facebook or whatever and see the comments. One day I calculated the comments and I put a percentage how many of them are negative and positive. And you can't imagine someone saying to them Ramadan Kareem, and they go in the comments swearing at him, speaking negatively. And I feel it in the tone of the media, for example, the Arab media. Still, the level of hatred is huge. So there will be some form of schizophrenic approach here. We'll have deals at the top level, but down there in the population, the hatred is deep. And it's just a matter of time when we may not find leaders actually with reasonable mindset to deal with Israel. So it's worrying. And the only solution is to try to do something to change the masses, if you take it that way, to change the masses and the grassroots themselves. That's why.
Just a quick follow-up. So you think it's going to be a top-down rather than a bottom-up approach?
You need both. You need top-down to give you chance to speak and allow you to reach people and put your thinking process or education in their education. Like let us say if one of these countries adopted one humanity education, this can really make huge change in the Middle East and in the world after that. So the One Humanity is my program that's about the change of the thinking, the process of radicalism. So it has to be top down. but the approach has to go also to the grassroots via the online teaching as well and the internet. I think it has to go both direction. If we want to achieve something historical, it has to go from both top down and bottom up at the same time. And it's very possible to do this. You can go through the short videos and comments and go to the normal YouTube and Facebook and Twitter approaches, and you can have a structured curriculum going to the education here and there, Al-Azhar, whatever. If it is adopted by some of the leaders there, it can really solve a huge problem that will come in the future. Because I see the future when I see the comments of the Arab people on any issue related to Israel. The hatred is very deep. I don't see any significant change happening, even though there are some political deals at the top level, but all are words. Like we have Abrahamic Accord. Yes, that's fine, great, wonderful. But tell me how people are going to change by doing some meetings at the top level, with all my due respect to this.
Yeah, it's been, excuse me, it's been a real serious problem, even with countries that have made peace with Israel, with the exception of the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, where it's now people-to-people peace. However, with Egypt and Jordan, it's still on the top only. It hasn't seeped down to the people. It's not yet a people-to-people peace. And this is where the program comes into play. Your program.
Yeah.
In any case, I would like to call on Major Sam Walter. I'm sure that all of them have questions for you, but they're shy, so I'm going to call
welcome to everybody. I will be delighted with any question.
Sam, do you have a question?
Hi, yes, Doctor, thank you so much.
This is our youngest major, United States Army.
Yes, I was actually to perform service in the United States Army up in Kurdistan, up in northern Iraq, and seems like the Kurdish people don't necessarily hold the same views that most of the folks in the Arab world and the rest of the Arab world do about the Jews and Israel, or at least until recently in some of the other countries. I'm wondering, is there some sort of socialization or a cultural some part of the culture that makes the Kurdish population different than a lot of the other places in the Arab world?
So the question is, like, can you just define the question clearly for me?
Well,
yeah, so we've talked about how there's a lot of anti-Jewish, anti-Israel sentiment around much of the Arab world, but it seems like Kurdistan, at least Iraqi Kurdistan, would be an exception.
So the question is why they are different? Is this a question?
Yes.
Yeah. They are different because when you are suppressed minority, for whatever reason, you generally tend to sympathize and feel for other suppressed minorities. So the Kurdish people were very suppressed by traditional Arabs. They feel that they have their own identity. When I meet with them, they speak their language in general with one another. They are have more of a Persian influence also on them, and more of a Turkish influence than the Arabs. So I see the Kurdish people in general feel very strong about their identity. They have been suppressed by the traditional Arabs around them. And they see the Jewish people also were suppressed in many of the Arab countries with hatred, or when they kicked them out, also remember in the 60s, from Iraq, from Algeria, from Egypt, in a very humiliating way. So I feel that, and they have seen them actually humiliated in Iraq in the past. And so I think this created some form of sympathy to one another. So the Kurdish people feel that the Israeli people also are minority like them. They have their own identity. They have their own language. They want to have their own country like them. So this similarity creates some form of sympathy and relationship that's different from the Arab Israeli situation.
Subhas. And also, do you think perhaps some of the minorities in Iran might have similar views for that same
Absolutely,
reason.
the Baha'i minority and Al-Ahmadiyya group also in Iran. So all the suppressed groups in this area tended to really feel for the Jewish people. Like, for example, when the Jewish people celebrate the Holocaust, for example, they remember Jehovah's Witnesses, for example. You see what I mean? Sometimes they invite them. So the feeling of if I am a minority, you are a minority, I feel for you. That's and suppressed minority. So the same with Iran, you have the Baha'i. They are very suppressed in Iran. The Baha'i people are very peaceful people. Ahmadiyya group also, they belong to Islam, but they have their own views and understanding. They are very suppressed in Iran. And both of them, as far as I know, have real feeling for the Jewish people and Israel. I have seen this in reality, because they speak to me this language.
I want to call on Dr. Roger Grayson to ask a question. Come on, Roger, let's go.
Thank you, Joseph. Thanks for a fabulous presentation. There's a history, a kind of common history within both Islam and Christianity of supremacism to some degree. We have the final word of Allah, or the final word of God. And every word, for example, in the Quran is holy, can't be changed. And the Jews in both religions have been singled out in the holy books for particular condemnation. Now, to Christianity's great credit in the last half century, there's been quite a coming to terms with this. It's in process, but amongst the clergy in particular, the key leadership.
Yeah.
And they've made a lot of progress.
Yes.
And so my question to you is the real progress that you've mentioned needs to happen within Islam, is that possible without the clergy leading it, the imams leading it themselves?
That's very good question. Thank you, truly. I really like this group very much, because the questions are really of very high quality, honestly. Look here, I can summarize my answer as follows. There is a change already happening among the population without a major change from the clergy via the internet. I called it years ago e-reformation, and it's happening, and the number of people every day is increasing via the work of people like me and others, and here and there. So when you follow the media and the social media in the Muslim world in Arabic, you will be surprised how many anti-Islamist and anti-radical and views are there, and every day they are increasing. They are fighting to put their information on Facebook and YouTube. So there is a movement, I can say, at the grassroots level. But the clergy, only a small percentage have really changed, and this creating a problem, because you have a change of, let's say, 15% or 20%. You still have 80% are waiting for the clergy to change. So I can say it will ideally, if you manage to change the clerks and with the grassroots as well. But in the worst case scenario, by working on the grassroots itself, it's creating a lot of pressure now, and people are having the knowledge to critique and criticize the clergy. So it's really working in certain way. But if your vision is materialized into a real movement from the clergy itself, that can make things much faster. The problem that we are having is simply that. And this distinction, I need to make it very clear. In the West, You have someone who is educated and he would like to study theology, and he goes to study Christianity, for example, at theology, he become a pastor. So you have certain level, and the same for rabbis. You have certain intellectual capability here dealing with these matters. But let me tell you how it works with the people who go to Al-Azhar, for example, in most cases, not in every case, okay, but in most cases. When some child fails in education in general, the normal education, and in work, they used to send them to something called Al-Katatib or Al-Azhar to become a scholar after that. So people who become scholars there are the ones who are, I don't like to say it, but incapable, in my opinion, to make the change, not just unwilling. So if they are just unwilling, that is a problem by itself. And this can change based on the political power and the money that they are given. But many of them are even incapable. And helping them actually with simple and effective educational ways, if it can come from top level here, it can help change things. Because if you left them on their own, they are actually incapable of producing interpretations that can really make a difference. And that's one of the problems we are facing, that people who are in the clergy level, many of them are not just unwilling. Do you know why they are unwilling? Because if I taught you like something like read the law, or killing a Muslim if he converted to Judaism or Christianity or whatever, then today I'm telling you, oh, that's wrong. I changed my mind. It's okay. Can you imagine the earthquake that can happen in the mind of people? You taught me all these years, and people have been killed because of your fatwa, and today you are telling me that you were wrong? So they are in a very difficult position politically to make a major change. They are, many of them are unwilling, and many are even incapable of doing it. And that's why I felt the need for some intellectuals to go in the process. And there is a political directions here trying to fight radical Islam. When I talk about President al-Sisi himself or Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia, I do believe both of them are genuine in making change in this area, but maybe they don't know how. They don't have, like, they calculate every step because it's a huge thing. But what I have heard, for example, from Mohammed bin Salman was huge. And following Mohammed bin Salman, because the clerks changed after him immediately. But the kingdom style is different from Egypt. In Egypt, the clergy is resisting al-Sisi. So there is some form of continuous conflict here. But if I would summarize, ideally, we need the cooperation of the three powers, and four powers actually: the politicians, the clergy, the people of business or have money, for example, and support good things, and the intellectuals who can offer something to make a real change on ground.
Well, if nobody asks, I'll ask this question. President el-Sisi.
Yes.
I think that in many ways, he's been quite a change insofar as Egyptian leaders are concerned, vis-a-vis Israel, vis-a-vis dealing with the West as a whole. How is he getting along with Al-Azhar and the clergy?
Yes, that's what I mentioned in my last question, that there is a big problem between, like, friction here, that Al-Azhar doesn't want to follow al-Sisi direction in modernizing the understanding and in the interpretations of the religion. Al-Sisi was very honest and clear about it. There is a need to make a change. We have a problem. This is what I liked about the man, and also that he admitted it. We have a problem and we need to change. The clergy, Al-Azhar, who is the top Al-Azhar, if the others do not know, the audience do not know what is Al-Azhar, It's the highest Islamic university in the world, more than 1,000 years of time. So the Sheikh Al-Azhar has in many situations resisted what President Al-Sisi is trying to do. But when Mohammed bin Salman changed, Al-Azhar started to weaken a little bit. Now their situation is a little bit better, but still they do not want to follow the direction that Sisi wants the country to go to, of modernity and accepting the other, accepting everyone. So he's a good man, I believe so, from my analysis of the way he speaks, the way he treats people. He is a good human being deeply in his heart. But the clergy of Al-Azhar are really difficult to deal with, and he is trying. But I can say there is multi-components here. And the more we get more components working in the direction of modernity, the more we will win this game.
Joe, I have a question.
Go ahead, please.
Doctor, what is the psychological impact of killing Zawahiri and the head of the Republican Guard and on the Arab public?
You mean killing of al-Zawahiri, the first in command of Qaeda now?
Also Soleimani.
Soleimani. Look, if you went historically, if you looked historically, you see Islamism phenomena in general. I'm talking about the violent style of Islam went up when people felt they are very strong, and on the contrary, it went down when they felt they are defeated. So, for example, after the defeat of the Turkish Ottoman Empire, many in the Muslim world started, the women took the veil off, and many start to modernize, wear modern dress, and they started to go into the path of modernity until we have the petro-Islam thing that happened in the 70s, where things start to deteriorate again. But you see that even in the early history of Islam, if you studied the early stage of Islam, after the initial victory of the early Muslims, there was some huge defeat in a war called Uhud. It's a name of a mountain in the Arab Peninsula, and it's the Muslims were defeated. After the defeat, many of them left the religion and started to leave things. So I think the psychological impact of the feel of defeat is huge. The killing of al-Zawahiri certainly showed them they have been defeated. Al-Sulaimani showing them that the US has the capability of reaching someone, or Israel that target to someone to this level. They have the technology. It makes many of the young generation do not want to really become attached to a defeated ideology. So you see the impact on young generation. Many of them are really starting to not all, of course, but moving away from the radicalism. But I can't say but I'm adding that the impact is a feel of defeat in their mind that creates a desire either to accept a change in the ideology or to leave the whole issue of radicalism and Islamism. So it's certainly positive when you show them some form of psychological defeat. So I can summarize it as a form of psychological defeat that can facilitate and help the process of anti-radicalization measures that some people are doing.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
Tawfik, I want to come back again with this. There are 1.2, 1.5, we don't know the exact number of Muslims in the world.
Yeah.
But it's fair to say that about at least 85% are more or less, if not radicalized, at least sympathetic to radical Islam.
Yes.
Has it changed?
Yes, it's changing, especially with the young generation, but the older generation are still stubborn because they have been into this for years. But certainly the internet allowed, I'll tell you what the internet has done. the internet allowed an amazing phenomena to happen. In the past, for example, someone like me, I used to go speak in mosques against the radicals. Literally, I used to give Friday prayers without even preparation. I go if I'm invited and speak and quote the Quran fluently, effectively. I'm much better in Arabic than English. This I can assure you of this.
I'm sure.
So I was fighting them man to man, face to face. But I'll tell you honestly, my life was threatened many times as individual. So what happened nowadays, the internet allowed two major and beautiful things here that's power in our hands if we used it effectively. Number one, it protects the reformers from physical attacks. So if someone hates me because of my views, he cannot really do anything. He doesn't know where I'm sitting now. I could be in Sweden or New Zealand or Egypt. He doesn't know, or America. So it limited the threat to the reformers, which is something good. The physical threat, I mean, the other thing that the online reform thing can do or did was that it encouraged the critical thinking. If you put some question now on the internet, on Twitter or Facebook, and you ask and people start to interact with you or respond to you in certain way, they have to think, they have to analyze, because if they just swear at you, this will show that they have been defeated. It's not physical war anymore. You have to think to answer. Dr. Hamid, if he put some question, you have to think about it and put the logical answer to prove that he is wrong. Just by doing this is actually against radicalization. The radicalization process starts by depressing your critical thinking. So the online world created a situation where I cannot attack you physically, and I have to think to put an answer that's more logical. So if I couldn't find, then I may have to approve or admit that you are correct. So I think it's creating a paradigm and creating an atmosphere. If it is utilized effectively, correctly, and promptly, it can change the future of the world, I believe so, and the Middle East and Israel, Egypt, the whole area, because things can significantly change if the grassroots changes.
I see that Kenny Moskowitz is
okay.
to, I'm sorry?
No, I was going to ask a question.
Oh, go ahead, please.
Okay. Tawfik, hi, it's Fern. How are you?
Hello, how are you, my friend?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm so glad to see you.
I'm so glad
I wait to see you in person again, though. But listen, Tawfik, I wanted to ask you a question, because your response to Phil's question regarding the Abraham Accords and the grassroots, you said bottom up, but both top down. But if we flip over to Israel and to what's happening in the UNRWA camps, what's happening with Palestinian kids, I'm concerned because what you're dealing with now, and it's wonderful, but you're dealing with people who are adults, who can think, who can critically think, who can read the graphs, and they understand, as you showed, that even with throwing out the Jews, the Egyptian economy, didn't get any better. But what do you do right now? For instance, today, this is August 7. I mean, there are kids right now, over 100,000 of them in summer camps. They're like terrorist summer camps, paramilitary summer camps. What do we do about all of those children so that we can nip it in the bud before they get to adulthood? And I don't think they're being radicalized just in mosques. They are being radicalized in camps, and they are being radicalized in basketball and soccer and everything else. Everything that involves their life, is a form of radicalization.
Absolutely, my sister. It's terrible situation what's happening to these kids. It's form of abuse and
exactly.
The problem with the kids also is they when you shape their mind at this very early stage, it becomes even more difficult for later on changing this. So I can see there are different ways to approach this phenomena. If you are asking me how I would think about solving this issue, via different approaches or tactics.
Well, also with the internet, because the kids are on internet. Yeah.
I need to at some stage to squeeze my mind more to create, and this my wife can help with me a lot. She helped me a lot in every aspect here, to create some form of non-traditional approaches, like cartoons, for example, competition for children. For example, recently in one of my programs, I wanted to teach general in kids. It could be kids like any age, or young adults or kids. The concept that they shouldn't judge you because you are a Muslim or Christian or Jew. They shouldn't really discriminate against you. So instead of just going to the high level of education and make things really complicated for them, I created a video, very simple video, but professional. You will like it. And I said there was a competition between three artists, painters. Okay, and the first one was called Muhammad, and this is his photo or painting. The second one, would you mind to come, Maha? I would love to introduce you. Yeah. And the second one was a Christian called Mark, and the third was Jewish called Moses. And there are three paintings in front of you. Each one created one. Then I asked them, tell me which one of them you think is better. Okay. And painting. And I make like a sort of calculator, 10, 9, 8, giving them time to think about it. And then after it's finished, I said, oh, please accept our apologies. We did a mistake in the names. And actually, the names are reversed. This one was Moses, this one was Muhammad, this one, and I changed the name.
Right.
Then I said to them, how do you see it now? Just now, between you and your human conscience, you will realize you were unfair without even telling you are unfair. So there are ways to reach the children mindset via cartoons even. I haven't done this because I'm doing on personal efforts, almost personal efforts. But I'm sure if I have some sort of power behind me and resources, I can create cartoons with videos, songs even, to promote beautiful meanings. So this is in my mind, but just the limitations are just what's
absolutely. No, I know.
If I have the power with me, you will see songs, you will see beautiful music and cartoon, and I will go even to a songwriter of top-notch level to create it. Even stories of animals and cartoons, you can teach some wonderful meaning through them. It's big. I can say I enjoy doing it, honestly.
Right.
I enjoy it because I feel it can change the hearts and souls and minds.
Exactly.
Thank you for the question. We need an extra care. I haven't done it because of the resources, but I can do it. I reassure you that I have many ideas that I have not really done yet. Yeah.
We got to get you a grant for money. Okay.
Hi.
Okay.
Debbie, Dr. Debbie Soffen.
Yeah. This is
Fellow Dr. Tawfik.
Hi.
Hello. How are you? Pleasure to meet with you.
So, I'm Debbie Soffen. I'm actually also an MD. I'm a pediatrician. This is something I have personally been involved in too. So I've been working to try to stop the hatred that's taught in the schools of the Palestinian children. I'm kind of curious, growing up in Egypt, were you not exposed in school to a systematically anti-Semitic curriculum all those years?
Absolutely. Let me tell you something. It's painful, but it is sadly a reality.
Yeah.
When I was around the age of 4, for example, or 5, I used to think the Jewish people, and my apologies again, but this is how we have been like manipulated, okay?
Right.
Are green in color and do not like real humans. They have strange ears and they are green in color. They are not like us. They are not human beings.
Right. Right.
And this was during Nasser time. I was very young, and I was really like things changed because of one simple thing. When my father was an orthopedic surgeon, my father was not religious at all. He was a Marxist, and yeah, he doesn't believe much in religions, but he was studying history in certain history book, and he used as a father to enlighten us. He was really great in this. He asked me one day, said, Tariq, my real name is Tariq. Tawfik is the name I use for the name. But Tariq, come here. I would love to show you something. And he showed me the photo for a moment when some father with his children were going to be burned in the Nazi ovens. And he explained to me all about the Nazi Hitler, what he did to the Jewish people. And you can't imagine, my sister, since this moment, I had something in my heart toward the Jewish people, something I cannot really even change because it was imprinted in my heart when I was young. And this comes to the point that you can take child and either put in his mind something good or something bad, that it can affect all his life after that. But I do agree with you. Yeah, it happened in Egypt and it's happening today. And I knew Hamas, for example, is using the mathematical calculations, 2 + 3 Jewish people killed, or how many killed, so to teach them mathematics.
Right.
So,
right.
Go ahead,
I'm very familiar with the education in Gaza, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem, and it was my understanding that the curriculum throughout the Arab Muslim world isn't much better. There are some countries that are a little more moderate than others, but it's a pervasive problem. And I know you said that you really need to go address what's being taught in the mosques, and I completely agree with you. But politically, as an American, I have no influence over what's taught in a mosque in Cairo, but knowing that my government supports the education of children, at least in all the UNRWA schools, that is our tax dollars, and so I've been very vocal about saying this is completely inappropriate. I years back called it child abuse, it's a concept that's now pretty widely used, and it's abusing these children to teach them to basically become jihadists when they grow up, and that's their, to martyr themselves. So I think that both are really important, that to change the whole ethos of the whole culture, you have to go after everything. You have to go after the schools, get that out of the schools. You have to have some kind of oversight over the teachers, because even if you give them better books, if all they want to do is teach hatred, they're going to teach hatred unless somebody's watching what they're doing. So you have to monitor that. I don't know how you go after what goes on in the mosques, but it sounds like you're addressing that. Social influencers are very important to the younger generation on the internet, and that's something that's a different generation than me, but I know that's very important. We need more people like you, because you can speak from your heart of what you grew up with. But I know that these children are being brainwashed from the minute they are babies, and they get into school, and it's over and over and over. And it doesn't take a lot of terrorists to cause problems. You can have 100 kids and one, is inspired to blow up a pizza place, and and it's a tragedy.
tragedy, a real tragedy. And this reminded me of a moment when I was sitting with Maha at some friend's house in Egypt, Cairo. And they were not deep friends, but they invited us. And all of a sudden, I found the rest of the family, her sister, her brother, and they were doing Zagruta. Zagruta is some movement of the tongue, like that when they celebrate something good. And I asked it, what happened? And they said the Palestinian people exploded a bus for young children in Israel, just 3 years old, 5 years old. This was years ago when I was in Egypt.
Yes.
So, and they were so happy and celebrating as if the Muslim world invaded the Roman Empire, for example. You did really, with a distorted mind and the brain. And coming to your point, I do believe when you said not necessarily not in our generation. No, we can see some change in few years if we use the internet effectively. I believe so. The internet has changed the world, the online thing. For example, I am in front of you now. For years, I used to preach peaceful things. Only 6 people followed me, including Maha, my wife. Nowadays, I got 2 million followers on the modern commentary for the Quran. When I put the One Humanity Education thing, I have relatively huge comments and interaction. So I'm optimist by nature. I cannot deny this, okay? But I can see there is evidence for having some hope if you have effective content and you have important system like the internet and you have good strategy and effective tactics. I believe we can make a significant change and we can all celebrate this together. So in our times, in few years, I am hoping to have some change. I don't work via mosques, to be honest with you. But my approach is mainly now grassroots level via the internet, but it creates a pressure on the mosque. When people learn well through the internet, through YouTube videos, through articles, through small pieces, through whatever I use, they become more resistant to the radical message they receive in the mosque. The same is, yeah, excuse me?
I'm sorry. No, go ahead, and then
I was saying the last thing here is also when the younger children learn, for example, a way of thinking in certain way. When I created One Humanity Education, I just didn't create it like this. It's I analyzed, and I like always to acknowledge who helped me with this was Maha. Actually sat with me and helped me to create it. I analyze the thinking traits that cause radicalism, and I try to make people who learn this One Humanity Education thing, which can go to the very young children, and the program can go to the very young children as well. I want to make them resistant or vaccinated in other way. One of my op-eds was, should we create an anti-radicalization vaccine? So yeah, my theory is that if I cannot change the mosques directly, indirectly, I can do a lot of things. I can make people unhappy with their message. I can teach young children's via government education, some form of programs that make them resist the message or more resistant to the radicalization message of the mosques. So I think the way you tackle it is important, because sometimes you can't really do all the 3 components together. Ideally, it will be beautiful, but there was some hope. Actually, I met with Sheikh Al-Azhar in person years ago. I was invited by some group and person to meet with the prime minister of the country and with Sheikh Al-Azhar. And he was supposed to be on our side. He was going to approve the One Humanity Education and the modern commentary for the Quran. And just imagine if Al-Azhar approved it, everyone will follow. And we can teach even the teachers of Al-Azhar how to teach the One Humanity Education. This is not a religious program at all. So they are flexible about it. Okay, you go into religion, they become some tense. They become tense. But this is not religious. It works on the thinking process. So we have great hopes, but sadly, The guy died in Saudi Arabia just 48 hours before my meeting with him. Can you imagine?
Oh my God.
And the guy who was helping me with this, God bless his soul, is he couldn't meet with the Sheikh Al-Azhar, and he met with the current one, and I met with the current one, and I gave him one humanity education in his hands, a demo. I haven't probably sent it to you, just I should send you a demo for one humanity education. And I explained it to him, and I told her, and he said, oh, let me have a look. But he was not a good man. And obviously he resisted what President Sisi is trying to do later on. Obviously he's a politician. He was with Mubarak group and a politician in general. And he calculates everything he is doing from a political angle. So I have difficulty. I tried, honestly, and I reached the top level, but the guy died, and this guy is not cooperating. The one who died was going to it. So history can change in either directions by individuals, as you know.
Right.
So I didn't lose hope. I still believe the grassroots level is fine, great. But ideally, if we provide also some curriculum and do more pressure on the UNRWA, for example, to accept one humanity education in their curriculum and expose them how they are teaching this, while we are like, there are ways really to attack from all directions. This is my belief. If I have any single way to do the job, I will use it. Any single, even a small, even 1% makes a difference for me. I was a chess player, master level, okay? And I calculate even the very small extra power that could be achieved if I move this instead of that. And it adds to me. So it's the way we deal with it. And thank God for the internet. And thank God that there are good people like yourselves who could be together with me on this mission. I hope so.
Right.
Well, there's another thing, if I can just interject. One thing we didn't cover is the impact of the media, especially in Egypt, but not exclusively in Egypt. Throughout the Arab world, the media is still an obstacle to, shall we say, tolerance?
Yes, it is an obstacle when it comes to the Jewish people particularly. They sometimes, with some political pressure, they sometimes try to lessen the level of anti-Semitism. But even when they lessen it, you still understand it. It's crystal clear in all hidden messages, in all comments, in the way they portray things. They never portray a view that can make people even think in a fair manner. It's always the views of the Palestinian people, like the latest attack, what's happening there, for example. Hamas started to attack with hundreds of, or not Hamas, the other groups, my apologies, start to attack is with hundreds of rockets. And when Israel retaliate, then they present it as Israel is the aggressor, Israel is this, and Israel is that. They have been programmed, and there is no logic. People lost logic in whole situation. That's why when through one humanity education, I'm trying, like the examples that I gave with the curve of the US dollar, and when the Jewish people left, if they are really bad, why then the Egyptian currency didn't go much more stronger? Why it becomes weaker and weaker? So no logic in the whole equation. We need some form of reason coming to the table here of the Middle East. And I'm happy that there is something called the internet. Otherwise, it would have been very difficult actually to have this talk. Because
one example is that the Egyptian entertainer Ramadan embraced an Israeli girl. He didn't know she was Israeli. The Egyptian media.
Muhammad Ramadan.
Yes,
number
yes,
one. Yes. He calls himself number one.
Yeah. And I think if you want to illustrate that sense of, I don't know if you call it anti-Semitism or anti-Israel, but that is a perfect example of how the media creates a storm of hatred.
Yeah, huge. So you have this storm happening, and we didn't have tools before to fight it. I believe today we have tools to do something and to make change. And we have content that can make a difference. So and we can develop even better content. Like, I thank you very much, Doctor, for raising the issue of the young kids, because this one of the things why Maha, my wife, I wish she can come with me just to say hello. If you can hear me, Maha, okay? She doesn't hear me. Sorry. It's
Oh, there she is.
Are you here, Maha? Yeah. I'm
Hello, Ma.
I was going to bring her beside me here so that you see her in the light. If you could kindly come here just to say hello to all of them, I would be great.
Well, it's good to have you. Thank you.
She's a pediatrician as well. She studied in Egypt, Cairo. And she is one of the biggest supporters, always mentioned the issue of the kids for me. Tariq, don't forget the kids in your programs. We can create stories for kids. We can create cartoons. And I say to her, look, Maha, that's a great idea, but I don't have time or ability to really like give the time to it. But the idea is great.
Yeah, I would like to add the program One Humanity Education. This is like, has cornerstone of that shaping the mindset, like a fabric. We can get out of it like a dress and same time short. So we can use the same concept in like teaching the adult and the kids. The kids is very easy to reach out because we can access them through the media and through the education. They have little stories. So when the mother helps them in their teaching or the education, so the mother will learn as well. If non-educated,
absolutely.
Yeah, if she's educated, we can reach her about through like talk shows, through movies, through like articles. So if we use the concept in different ways, we can reach all sects of societies with different ages and education backgrounds.
Absolutely.
Absolutely true.
Different approaches. And I am very grateful to the Dr. Debbie and Dr. Ma, my wife, for raising the issue of the kids here, the young ones, because now I can say Tawfik Hamid is starting to think in ideas of using songs. Thank you, Dr. Debbie. Thank you, truly.
Debbie, did you want to? I think she wanted to add something.
Please go ahead, cartoons, and please go ahead. You raised the issue, and it was like an eye-opening for me. I'm very grateful.
You're
Debbie,
welcome.
go ahead. I'm sorry. You had
I was just curious about about the political will in Egypt, for instance, since that's where you're from, and you would know. General Sisi, he wants to have a modern country, and he has been, I think, a reasonable partner with Israel. Is he approachable to making changes I would really like to see the schools get better, and if say Egypt did take a lead in that, and maybe other countries followed. I know the UAE did, because I know there's no political will obviously with the PA and Hamas. If anything, that they are completely this brainwashing is what keeps their mission going.
They get more money.
They get money, exactly. If the conflict stopped, they wouldn't get the money.
Absolutely.
Yes. So could Egypt be say a trailblazer here?
Go ahead.
And is there a way to approach General Sisi or people who work with him?
It's very good point. Thank you so much for raising this issue. And there is a difference between the Palestinian Authority and the President Sisi at different levels. The Palestinian Authority nowadays, for them, it's a way that brings them money, new funds, more funds, attack Israel, more funds, and it goes like this with them. So they have no interest at all for making peace or creating peace or be peacemakers. On the contrary, President Sisi is a rational guy, and through my analysis to his comments on different situations, and Maha's analysis as well, she follows what he's saying very deeply. He is a good human being. I believe he doesn't have anti-Semitism at all, in my opinion. He would like to see Muslim, Jews, and the Christians together living in real peace and harmony together. I think that's the desire of the man. But, and here it is underlined this word, but the problem with the Sisi is he is one of a kind when it comes to the political atmosphere itself. So you have many people are against any change in this direction. Plus, the fight with the Sheikh Al-Azhar is putting him in a very sensitive situation with changing things related to religion, because hatred to the Jewish people in Egypt is partially based on political history with Nasser and 1967 war and all this stuff, and partially is ideologically driven. So when you come to a political leader like Al-Sisi, tell him in this current time, when the country is still shaking after 2 revolutions, when the economy is not yet on the right direction, there are many obstacles, when you tell him do something to touch in a more aggressive or more active manner with the ideology, he will be a little bit scared that the country can go into chaos. This could be used against him by the radicals, by the Muslim Brotherhood, and things can go. He cares about the country, he cares for many other things, so he is probably hesitant to take such steps because it can backlash in a terrible way with the current situation, particularly after Corona now and after Ukraine and all this stuff. My analysis, my understanding is approachable. If we can reach him, he is a good person. I believe so. If you manage to reach him with not with the ideological part of what I said today, with one humanity education alone. That's not, it's completely, I can say, secular style, or it does not talk about verses in the Quran or hadith. It works on the mindset, dealing with absolutism, judgmentalism, literalism, how literal, and I do it in a very interesting way. With illustrations, with questions, with videos. So it's a way that can be taught to schools. For example, one video, 1 hour, how to accept the other, giving several examples, making them think. And this video can be distributed in every school, asking the whole school to watch this video together. One day I was invited by Al Jazeera in Doha, Qatar, to stay for 1 month period, speaking 3 times a day there. It was historical for me. And in the last day, I received a call from someone in Qatar who was very high in the country, one of the top people in education, university. And he asked me, Dr. Hamid, I knew him I met with him in the National Prayer Breakfast here. His name was Ibrahim al-Naimi. And he called me, and Dr. Ibrahim Naimi, he is a professor in chemistry and this stuff, but he's in education. People would love to hear your views about one humanity education that I mentioned to him. And I talked to the audience, and I simply, while talking, I asked each one of the audience, take a photo with the cell phone. So I am here, you are here, she is here, she is here. It was relatively girls meeting. The students were all girls. So, and I asked the 3 people other than myself, in addition, to take photos, and said to them, do you think your photo will be similar to my photo or the other? Of course not. So we are different. Does this mean we are wrong? No. So I start to teach them that being different doesn't mean you are bad or wrong. Listen to the other. And then I took it further. I said, imagine if we gather here and you showed me your photo and I showed you my one and she showed me the other ones. And then we all together showed our photos. We will be able to see this room in a better way. And they like the concept very much. They upload. So what I am saying here is the one humanity education style that's not religious, but it can reach the politicians and it can help them take the decision to implement something like that in their school curriculum as well. even in the mosques, because they will not feel scared. President Assisi will feel a little bit worried if he went into religion and they start to say he's against Islam and all this stuff. But supporting some concept that works in the mind and at the cognitive levels of the thinking process that creates radicalism itself, I think this we will give them a gift here and open for them the opportunity for someone like Assisi, who I believe is a good human being, to really take it further. If we manage to reach him, yeah.
If
Well,
I may ask
Kenny,
While-
please,
while
I was going to
listening-
call on you.
thank you. While listening and trying to digest what you're saying, I believe one of the issues is the power of change that you're addressing. Historically, in my reading of the Arab history, the power of change, radical Islam has come up through the ages in Islamic history. And it's been goes into recess after some sort of military defeat, be it the Ottomans or the reference to as Ken said, to Soleimani and al-Zawahiri and maybe bin Laden, and hopefully the nuclear stuff in Iran. That's one power of change. Second power of change, which was new to me tonight, you addressed as the internet, and therefore are not the governments blocking what's happening on the internet? So it's two different sort of questions on change.
Yes, absolutely. Is it just a statement from you, sir, or is
It's really a question. Is my read of Islamic and Arabic history correct?
Absolutely.
And the future of the internet and blocking of the change that you're trying to create.
Absolutely. In the past, the change has to come upside down. Yeah, that's historically. But now we have a new era with the ability to reach millions of people. If you have good educational content plus resources to promote, to create and to promote it, that can help a lot. Plus, if you manage to take this content, the one that does not cause, like, for example, if you went to the US government here and you said to them, I would like you to support something related to the ideology, they may become reluctant to deal with it. But if you offered something like that deals with the ways of thinking that causes radicalism itself, that's completely different. The first option is the interference in religion. The second one is education. So traditional education. And so I think nowadays we have a new tool. If it is used well, we can really make significant changes. Absolutely.
Are the governments blocking the internet and it's used the way it's occurring in China and Russia, et cetera?
Can I tell you what's going on there? No, the government, for example, I'm talking about Egypt and the rest, they close it. For example, in Saudi Arabia, when something touches or they speaks negatively about the political leadership, maybe they try to block this. But when it comes to religious reform, situation is very different nowadays. They do not block it. And do you know how it is blocked? Like my page, personal page, Tawfik Hamid, is restricted for months, and I'm limited of using it effectively. Do you know why this happens? Not because of the government at all. The government actually invites me to speak on their media itself occasionally, so major media. So the reason is very strange. The radicals learn it. The Muslim Brotherhood groups and the other radicals learned the algorithm of Facebook very well. So what happened? They have special groups working to go and target the reformers' pages, like myself, and I know someone called Khalid Muntasir, great human being, and others. Do you know what they do? They go with all thousands of people. They give one order, command, all follows, and sometimes they pay money for some people to do this. They go and report that my page that promotes human rights, that stand against anti-Semitism, that stands against the stoning of women, stands against slavery, is against community standards. So what happened? Facebook automatically blocked my page and blocked Dr. Khalid Muntasser, he's a dermatologist, his page as well. So the reformers are suffering because even Facebook, my problem is with Facebook, not with the governments. They are blocking reformers, not because they want to block the reformers, but the algorithm is not intelligent enough to stop this bizarre situation. When you have groups, it's well known in these countries. The Muslim Brotherhood, the radicals go behind the pages of the reformers, report to Facebook. It's against community standards, Automatically, they block you, and they actually, my friends in Egypt, his page was even deleted from Facebook. So it's a strange situation. We are not fighting the governments nowadays. When you speak about reform in general, and as long as if you do not go into politics much, you are okay. You see, so they are happy with this because they need better tourism. They need more money now. So it's moving in the direction of MBS of Saudi Arabia, and it's very powerful there. And as Sisi, President Sisi as well. So the real obstacle, believe me, are not the governments now. The real obstacle is with this algorithm. My page is restricted while I'm speaking to you now. Can you imagine it? And the pages of the radicals are working all right because I didn't have the ability to gather thousands, pay them money to go behind their page and report it is against community standards. I can show you on their Facebook encouraging slavery, encouraging kidnapping women of the non-Muslims and raping them and selling them in the slave market. And it is there on Facebook. But my content that teaches humanity is now bad for them. So we are dealing with some form of insanity. Reformers are trying their best, and that is the situation now.
Well, there is a Facebook has a big presence in Israel, and I'm sure, I would think, if you were able to reach out to them, right there, where are they? In Tel Aviv, I believe, and show them this could be fixed.
Yeah, that's brilliant idea. I believe if they knew that this is happening, they will find a way to fix it. I'm sure of this. It's just the human capability of one single human being sitting here, creating the content, creating the graphics.
I know a girl that works for Facebook in Israel. I might be able to.
Can I send you via Joseph the link that and they can check it. All what I need is they go check. If I am a bad guy, close the page, delete it.
Great idea.
All right, we'll talk about. I'll talk about how to connect.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I interrupted you. Debbie, go on.
I'll talk to you about. I know her mom, so and her mom's a big Zionist. So if I tell her this story, she will, hopefully.
I hope she can help.
Connect. Yeah.
Justice.
But they have a huge office in Israel, so I would think that they'd want to help you with this.
Thank you so much.
Well, we are coming to.
And one other question, Joe.
We're coming to a close shortly, so I want to give some people a chance to ask a question. Jerome is still there, and Jerome, if you have a question, I would really appreciate if you asked. Jerome?
I'm trying to unmute. I don't have a question.
Jerome is our newest board member from the South, from Alabama.
Hello.
And I really enjoyed what you have to say, and I appreciate what you're trying to do. I'm a very optimistic person, probably the most optimistic person you've ever met. I mean, I've read the book, I know how it ends, and so I've got a lot to be optimistic about. Yeah. But you have what we call in the South, a long road to hope. I just can't see any major change. From what I've been to Israel working at Catholic Medical Center. I used to go over every year for 2 weeks before COVID. working at Kaplan Medical Center and talking to a lot of the Palestinian people that worked in the hospital. I hope you can make a difference.
I'm sorry, I missed the question. Can you kindly repeat it?
I didn't have a question. I was just saying I certainly hope that you can succeed in what you're trying to do.
Oh, many thanks for this.
Thank you.
It encourages me a lot to have good people around me. I feel like it gives me hope. Just I've been fighting this maybe at individual level like this, but from this table, I created all my stuff from this place, this particular sitting exactly on this computer. So I'm hopeful person, and I still have hope that something can happen to change the world in a good way and to make it better. And let us hope that we can be part of it. Thank you.
Amen, inshallah.
Tawfik, are there other broadcast media?
Let me just say this, Tawfik, since we did mention Egypt a great deal, what's the state of the relationship of the government towards the Christians in Egypt? I'm talking about has it changed?
It's changing significantly since Al-Sisi started to visit the Christian community.
I'm talking about the Copts in particular.
Yeah, Christian, I mean, majority Copts, yeah. And as President Sisi was the first president to visit them 3 times, actually, or 4. Every year now he visits them in their major celebration of the Christmas. For them, it is January 7, not December 24. So it's January 7. He celebrates with them every year. This was the first president in the history of Egypt to do this. Also, when he started the new capital called Al-Asima Al-Jadida, which is like a new capital for the country, besides the Cairo, the traditional Cairo. He created 2 major buildings, one of the biggest mosques in Egypt, and in front of it, huge church, also equal in size, in front of one another. So he was great in doing it that way, like not only mosques. Then he established a meaning that churches can be built in the country. It's not like as many people wanted to happen, that they destroy churches, they prevent churches from being built. Sometimes one of the churches was destroyed. He made the government pay for the whole construction area. So the man is trying, but I think it will be great help for him if he was offered, but I don't know how to reach him in person to show some examples of the way of which can make the politicians at ease when they take decisions, because when you approach radicalism from an ideological religious angle only, they become so afraid of going into this path. But if there is another way in the brain and mind that you can use, they will feel much more comfortable to support this or to move forward with this or to take this as part of the curriculum in the country. So yeah, so I can say the Christian community feel it when you talk to them, the Copts, they feel there is a change. When people change through the internet also, you have a wave of reform happening. Many of them told me that they have more calls coming to them on their Christmas, January 7, to celebrate with them and talk to them. So there is a movement or hope, and it's moving, but it needs to be faster, in my opinion, and we can make it fast.
As a follow-up question, let me ask you about the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yes.
I know that El-Sisi has, pretty much dealt with them effectively. Yes. Are they rising in influence, or what's the status there?
Look, he dealt with them traditionally by their leadership is in prisons. There are many people who are turning against them because many of their leaders were exposed. Like one of their ideological leaders, for example, has his videos. People cut certain parts and distribute them. So a lot of exposures to their anti-Egyptian direction. So they don't believe in countries, they believe in their organization, and they want to control Egypt to make it part of the caliphate. Egyptians have some form of national pride. So for them to tell them we will have no Egypt and it will be just a small part of our caliphate, Egyptians can become very angry with this. So I think the government has exposed them very well. Many people analyzed what they are doing, exposure here and there. I have some talk about the Brotherhood on one of the biggest programs on Al Jazeera, was seen at the moment on air by 70 million people. I will send this link to you. It's translated into English as well, so you will see the whole discussion about the Brotherhood. There are many people talking about them, not only myself. Many. I think they are in a weaker position, but I can say, look, do you have a couple of minutes? I can explain something here. Is there a chance that
Go ahead.
I have
Take your
2 extra
time.
minutes to explain? Okay.
We can stay as long as you can stay.
Oh, thank you so much.
It all
I can
depends
stay forever. So
It all depends on David
don't
Barrow,
take the
our
challenge
host.
with me.
We have our host here. his
So
name is
no,
David
I
Barrow.
just wanted to mention here something that I described in the past, which was like, it was like, I can show it to you here. Yes, here it is. Like this is the Islamic culture, okay? You have, do you see the circles? It's like bullseye circles. I saw the Islamic culture as 5 groups. First group are cultural Muslims who just knows that they are Muslims by name, Muhammad or Fatima, nothing more. They knew nothing about the real actual ideology or so, and they are okay, fine, no worries about that. They celebrate the Eid with balloons and the equivalent of the Christmas or Hanukkah in the Muslim world. They live and die as Muslims, and they are their knowledge is very limited about the religion. Then you have ritual Muslims who care about doing the 5 pillars, al-Hajj, praying, Then you have theological Muslims who want to see their country ruled by Sharia like Taliban. But they don't use violence. But they dream about seeing, for example, their country like Taliban. They are okay as long as their percentage is below certain threshold. But once their percentage increases in number, they will see the real face, and this can change into more support of violence, and that will be problematic. But currently, they don't use violence, this theological group. Then you have radical Muslims who take the things in their hand and come to you and say, why you don't wear a hijab, why you drink alcohol, and you use violence against you. Then you have the terrorists. And I like to give a very illustrative story here, or illustration here. Imagine if we went all together tomorrow or tonight to a party, okay? Then we have Muhammad or Fatima sitting with us, celebrated everything, danced with us, drank some wine. That's fine. Muhammad or Fatima are cultured Muslims. Great. If Muhammad said, excuse me for 5 minutes, I will go just to make my prayer, and I will come back. And he came back, enjoyed everything, ate what we ate, drank with us, sang with us, danced. Ritual Muslim, he cared about doing the prayer. The culture didn't care about it. The ritual cared about it, but not more than this. Theological Muslims, if Muhammad said to you, I'm so angry that you have alcohol here and you have pork, I'm very annoyed, and he left with anger, he is a theological Muslim. You see, if he stopped, but he didn't use any violence. If Muhammad took the only bottle of wine that we have and broke it, destroyed it, then Muhammad is the radical Muslim. He used violence. If Muhammad exploded the whole area, then I don't need to tell you who is Muhammad. He is the terrorist here. So what I can say is that when you see in the past, the direction was typically from the 70s going inward. What I can say today in a more descriptive manner, that I can see it. There is another arrow moving toward the periphery as well. So in the past, it was only toward the center, more women wearing the hijab, more anti-Semitism, more discrimination against minorities, more radicalization. But nowadays, with the several factors and variables, and mainly the internet role, in my opinion, and other things as well, there is an arrow moving outward. The approach should be trying to limit people who from going to the center and increase the number of people who move toward the periphery. So we need to have more movement. So if you ask me about the brotherhood, this is how I can describe things. There is still a lot of theological Muslims, but there is a curve moving to the periphery, which is certainly helpful. But we need to do a lot of effort here to make things change in a faster rate.
Thank you very much.
Terrific graphic and explanation. Are there other routes besides the internet that you've been able to take advantage of to get your message out, both to augment the internet and to bypass when they're trying to, cut you off from the internet? Kind of broadcast place. I mean, Israel, for example, has all kinds of ways to broadcast in all directions. It's just something off the top of my head that they could do. Is anybody else carrying your message?
There are many people who are trying. And I can say that it's not only me. There are many others. In fact, to be honest with you, one of my dreams, it's just a dream, that if this vision is taken further, empowered, supported, I will select the effective ones there, and I will try to empower them as well. So it will not be only Tawfik, it will be others as well who are good players. They need some form of support. I would do this. If I have the power and the ability, I will not hesitate. This is one of my priorities, to support others in this direction who are performing well, who have evidence that their content is creating a significant interaction there. The issue with other ways of this is where actually one of the Maha's ideas always mentioned to me. The TV in Arabic TV, there are some form of commercial ads that are very short, like 30 seconds, 20, or 1 minute maximum, to send a message. They used it a lot, for example, to convince Egyptians to diminish the number of children they have, to decrease the number of population, because you have huge numbers increasing every year. So they used it in the past to educate people about not to misuse the water, not to leave it open because it was free. So to try to this educational thing on TV can have very powerful effect if I used it to create very high level, of course, videos with 1 minute hitting some of the fundamental concepts in their brains and minds that leads to radicalism, making them think, ending with a question. And it's just very much more expensive. That's the only limitation I'm having here. That's why I use the social media, because it's free for me. But and I may put some ads or so, but still limited compared to TV things. But if we have cooperation, if we can, certainly there are other ways to reach. Even it can be very effective because people are relaxing, they get the message and they internalize it, and it can be a very effective tool besides the social media. And when it comes to social media, they can block you in Facebook, but there are YouTubes, there is Twitter, there is Snapchat. I'm like more, I'm a fighter, take it that way. So if they block me here, I will go there. So it's annoying. I have to admit that it's annoying when try to block you, but they didn't block me from YouTube, for example. And there are ways I can deal with the Facebook issues, but I still would love to use my personal page. You see what I mean? Like I can create a page in 5 minutes if I wanted to and start promoting things, but when it comes from your own page, it's less costly to do it, because I don't spend money. I just put it and it's seen by tens of thousands. So I can say there are many ways to reach Rome, if it is Rome here, and one of the ways is short ads, and this is one of my dreams. It's just it has to be very professionally done, not like the ones I do. It's very relatively fits the social media, but not the TV. Short ads hitting the main roots of radicalism, making people think, can change millions of people in a short period of time. In 1 year, we can see huge change. It just all depends on the power behind these videos, but the content is there and the will is there.
Well, it's 10 o'clock and we have to come to an end, unfortunately. Tawfik, it's been my brother Tawfik. You are a sweetheart. We love you.
I love you too.
Fantastic education. And I'd like to call on Dave Barrow, if he's there. He's our Zoom host. And I don't know if he's with us or he's just recording it. But in any case, we want to thank you. I know everyone on the Zoom conference here is appreciative. A great deal of what you've said is really getting to our hearts. And as a member of our advisory board and as a partner in what we hope to be a reformed Islam, I thank you again. See you soon. We'll talk very shortly.
Sure. Thank you.
And good night to all of you.
My dear family. Good night. God bless all of you. Thank you.
All the
Thank
best,
you.
Tawfik.
Great
Thank
evening.
you.
Thank you so much.
It's so nice meeting you.
Oh, thank you
Good
so
night.
much, my dear. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye. Thank you. Yeah. Yes.